Good afternoon. This is Nancy Mackey of Open Gate Consulting, and we're doing another profile. One of my good friends and colleague, Dr. Catherine Darley. We're going to be talking today in honor of Better Sleep Month. And Dr. Darley is a naturopathic physician with an extensive education and lots of research in sleep disorders and how to handle them and how to deal with them. And I've always appreciated your wisdom over the years, Catherine. So really excited to hear what you have to say. And maybe we could start by just having you share a little bit about your background and how you got into this field.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. I'm glad to be here. I started getting interested in sleep actually in college, and that resulted in a job offer working in a research center looking at teen sleep. And that's when I knew that this was the field I wanted to really dedicate my life to. I think of sleep as just so foundational, but in lots of courses for the public, wellness courses, there'll be talk about nutrition, there'll be talk about exercise, there'll be talk about stress management. But sleep is that other aspect that is absolutely essential. We all sleep, we must sleep, but it's often overlooked.
Yeah. Well, and at that young age, what was it that just really piqued your interest back then?
I think that the science is just so interesting, and the phenomenon of sleep and all the different sleep disorders are just fascinating. And sleep is actually a relatively new discipline if you look at the whole spectrum of medical disciplines and how long some of them have been around. Sleep is relatively new, and there's just a lot for us to learn.
Yeah. Well, and I know in working with you over the years, you work a lot with people in the workplace and helping first responders and a lot of the folks that are in disrupted sleep. What are you seeing as the impact of disorders, on people that are working?
Well, I think about sleep health as bringing wellness to 5 domains: our physical and mental health, which certainly those are going to impact performance in the workplace. And one of the things that we know looking at sleep and workplace behaviors is that people who don't have adequate sleep, either not sufficient time in bed, or they are having some kind of sleep disruption like apnea or whatnot, that they're more likely to call in sick than people who don't have sleep problems. And they're also more likely to have a problem with presenteeism. And I'm sure you talk about that with your clients. Presenteeism is when a person is physically located at their workstation, but no work is getting done. Yeah. They're present, but they just can't function because they're so impaired by sleep loss.
Yeah. Do you find that people make the connection between kind of their struggles during the day and their poor sleep, or is that something that people kind of have a hard time connecting the dots?
I think people have a hard time connecting the dots, and actually the research will show that is a couple things come together here in informing us. One is there are growing numbers of people not getting sufficient sleep Monday through Friday or during their work week. It's about 36% of American adults right now who are getting 6 hours or less 5 days a week. And that is just not sufficient for the vast majority of people. It's 6 hours a night is probably sufficient for somewhere between 2 and 3% of the population. The other thing that goes along with that, I think that people don't realize, is that when you're sleep deprived, you lose awareness of how significantly your performance is impaired. You get to the point where you've kind of adjusted to this new lower baseline as normal. And so you don't realize I'm really not functioning as well as I do when I get that 8 or 9 hours that I do best with.
And how have you as a clinician helped people to kind of identify that, or how do you help them see that?
Well, I like to ask people the question, how much sleep do you do best with? And often when I ask that, people will say, well, I can get by on X amount of sleep. And then I do a reframe and say, let's think about how much sleep that you really makes you feel at the top of your game. You're cognitively snappy. You're safe and attentive on the road, driving. You are emotionally even keel and able to relate well with others. How much sleep gives you that experience? And then really scheduling that into the lifestyle. And I think, if I could continue, one of the questions I think that people have kind of automatically made a decision, but they haven't necessarily examined the question is, do I want to have a long day, say an 18-hour day, only 6 hours of sleep, but that long day isn't going to be as good as if you necessarily got a 16-hour day with 8 hours of sleep that makes you feel your best. Are we sacrificing a quality daytime experience for a longer daytime experience? And I think, some people are making that choice, although they're probably not quite aware of it in such concrete terms.
Interesting. And what do you see are some actions that people can take to kind of improve their quality of sleep? How do you help people get there?
Well, the first thing is to schedule enough time, and then once you've scheduled enough time, I think people should get sufficient sleep for at least 10 days in a row. And then if you're still tired or, waking up in the night or some kind of sleep disturbance, check in with your physician and see if you may have insomnia, obstructive sleep apnea, restless legs, any of those conditions that destroy the quality of your sleep, even when you are spending sufficient hours in bed. Those are, on average, about 15% of people have one of those main sleep disorders.
And haven't the methods of identifying some of those more serious disorders gotten a little easier for people, to the testing and things like that? Has that gotten better over the years?
Yes. So now you can do overnight sleep testing at your home rather than having to go to the clinic. That's a little bit more comfortable. It is specifically for obstructive sleep apnea. It can't diagnose any of the other sleep disorders. Just to let folks know, there are 58 sleep disorders.
Wow.
So there's a broad range. Wow. And yes, it's a surprising number for a lot of folks. And going to a sleep specialist is where you could get those less common sleep disorders diagnosed. So that would be, a good option for people.
Yeah. And in your work, I understand you do a lot, again, with managers and organizations and helping them support their employees. So what advice do you have for leadership in organizations in how they can help people if they suspect there's a problem?
Yeah, so if you notice that an employee is struggling to stay alert, you can first maybe direct them to your EAP program. If you have the option of having them talk with someone one-on-one and maybe getting a referral to appropriate care. You can also, for people who are managing in a corporation where you're doing shift work, people are working overnight or into the hours when a human being usually sleeps. That's a great time to bring a sleep specialist, a consultant in to do what's called fatigue risk management. That's the system, and it's kind of a whole suite of services that have been shown to improve productivity and also safety. That is really important both for the corporation and for the individuals doing shift work. Fatigue risk management usually entails several arms, one of which is looking at the overall scheduling practices, seeing if those can be fine-tuned to improve human factors, looking at safety practices. Do you have enough bright light to maintain alertness in the workstations at night? Those kinds of things. Then there's management education about how to identify a employee who might be having sleep problems, what to do for that person. And then there's also education for those shift workers directly to help them learn some strategies to better manage the shift work. One thing that I wanted to mention is that studies have estimated that it's about $2,000 a year that corporations are losing per employee in productivity due to sleep problems. So that's, if you've got a small company, 10 employees, that means you're losing $20,000 of profit.
Wow. That's, adds up significantly. Yeah.
It certainly does. Right.
Well, that's the fatigue risk management. That's a new term to me. I hadn't been aware of that. So, and I'm imagining, have you gotten involved with that with your clients? And is that?
I have, and I feel like it's just really gratifying. It's bringing all people in the corporation onto learning about sleep, prioritizing sleep, and most importantly, putting systems in place so that your individual shift worker has their best chance of a good quality life, which, when it comes down to, that's what we all want, right?
Yeah. No, great. Well, it sounds like some great opportunities for some success stories there with that work. And so many people working shift work. That's great work. And I start thinking about that. I imagine sometimes, we know the things we're supposed to do to kind of improve our quality of life. All the basic health things, and I suspect that applies to sleep as well. What are some of the barriers with clients that you've worked with over the years, the barriers that you see people have to doing what they need to do to sleep well, and how do you help them overcome those barriers?
I think one of the barriers is just that lack or that reduced sensitivity to how significantly our performance suffers that we experience once we've had even 3 nights of sleep deprivation. You lose that awareness of how significantly you're impaired. So there's that. And then one of the things that most people have heard at this point is about avoiding blue light at night. But I think that people often have kind of a, I've heard that. How big a difference can it really make? And the reason that we want to avoid blue light is to allow our natural melatonin to rise. Melatonin helps us feel drowsy. It also goes throughout the body, and it has strong antioxidant, anti-inflammatory action. So we really need melatonin not only for our sleep and our circadian rhythms, but for our overall cellular health. And so the tip that I want people to keep in mind is if you reach your hand out at arm's length and you can see your fingers wiggling, that's enough light to suppress your melatonin somewhat. So when you are sleeping or when you are in your bedroom, it should be so dark that you can't see your fingers wiggling.
Good to know.
Then the other tip, which people have probably also heard, but actually there's some new recommendations which are even more rigorous. The recommendation is that for 3 hours before bed, we're in low light, 10 lux or less. A lux is 1 candle flame. So 10 lux would be less than 10 candles. That's hard to achieve in your modern lifestyle, right? Yeah. So a strategy I love is for people to get blue blocking glasses.
Snappy.
It's stylish, right?
Looking good.
They make everything look a beautiful kind of sunset hue, yellowish, pinkish color, and just wear those for 2 hours before bed.
Okay.
Helps people's circadian rhythm, helps people with insomnia, really great and easy to wear. You can have the whole household wearing the blue blocking glasses.
Easy and looking good too. I'm going to go get a pair. Those look good. Well, and I you mentioned the losing awareness. I started thinking about when you said that. I imagine it's like almost like when we're drinking, right? And we're kind of having too many drinks. We're kind of losing our perception without really realizing it. Do you liken it to that at all, or is that a fair
I do.
comparison?
I think, some people, they get to the second or third drink and they know, oh, I should probably stop, now a couple hours before I'm going to drive. But then if you keep going at the fifth drink, the sixth drink, whatever your alcohol tolerance is, you're like, oh, no problem, right? And I think the sleep deprivation gets to be that way. And, the idea that we could catch up is just not accurate. If you're missing 2 hours of sleep 5 nights in a row during the work week, are you really going to sleep an extra 5 hours, like 13 hours on Friday night and Saturday night? Probably not. That would be highly unusual.
Yeah. Wow. Well, amazing work that you're doing. And I don't know a lot of folks that do what you do. So I think you probably, have a lot of folks you're helping, and I appreciate all your insights today, Catherine. Is there anything you want to add that I didn't think to ask you?
No, I'd like to put a plug. If you are someone who wants to learn more about sleep tips, I'm on Instagram at Skilled Sleeper, because I really do think that sleep is a skill. And in many ways, it's not something that we learn in our education. So I'm trying to change that. You could follow me there for tips.
Love it. Skilled Sleeper. We will go there.
Sleeper. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Catherine. It's really been a pleasure, and a lot of good tips. So thanks again.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Sleep well.